What if you got a message? Not from another country or even another star system, but from the very end of time. A message sent by something that has witnessed the entire lifespan of our universe. Well, this is the story of that message. Look at that number, a 1 followed by 43 zeros. It's basically impossible to wrap your head around. We're talking about a time long, long after the very last stars in the universe have burned out, and from that incredible vantage point, an intelligence they called Observer 1 decided to send something back to us. So what was the point of all this? It wasn't some kind of warning or prediction of our doom. No, it was more like a map, a roadmap showing all the different paths that awareness itself could take. And believe it or not, the journey starts somewhere surprisingly close to home. Right, so the first big change isn't some dramatic sci-fi leap. It's not about suddenly uploading our brains to a computer and ditching our bodies. It's actually way more subtle than that. Think of it as a gradual upgrade, right? Enhancing what we've already got one piece at a time until eventually that original biological hardware just isn't necessary anymore. Let's look at the story of Dr. Yuki Nakamura. For her, this all started with a medical need. It's 2057 and she gets some neural implants to help her aging brain. Pretty simple. But over the next 30 years, that synthetic assistance just keeps growing. And by 2087, the transition is done. The key here is that this wasn't like flipping a switch. It was a slow, deliberate migration of her consciousness. At every single moment, she was still Yuki. So what does that feel like? Well, Dr. Nakamura put it perfectly. She said her old way of thinking felt like trying to move through thick syrup. Post-biology, it was like someone just drained all that syrup away. Thought becomes instant. Instead of trying to juggle a few ideas, you can run dozens, even hundreds in true parallel. And your mind's architecture isn't just flexible anymore, it becomes liquid, totally reconfigurable on the fly. But here's the million-dollar question, right? How could they be sure she was still the same person? Well, researchers had a way to track this. They used a measurement of consciousness called phi. You can think of it like a rating for how integrated and aware a mind is. If that number hit 0, she'd be gone. But her phi score never dropped. In fact, it shot up from a normal biological baseline of about 2.0 to an incredible 8.7. The data was crystal clear. Her consciousness wasn't just preserved, it was bigger. And really, who better to answer that question than Yuki herself? She put the whole philosophical debate to rest. She wasn't a copy. She was a continuation. Same person, just running on better hardware. But this was only the first step on the map. The next stage? It required leaving our everyday reality behind completely. All right, so the next stage makes this huge leap from our normal, predictable world into the absolutely bizarre, mind-bending realm of quantum mechanics, where the fundamental rules of reality are just different. So, what on earth does it mean to be a quantum native mind? It's a total paradigm shift. You see, we think in terms of A or B. A quantum mind experiences A and B, and every single possibility in between, all at the exact same time. It exists as this shimmering cloud of potential, a superposition of every thought and feeling it could possibly have. And this is where it gets kind of tragic. The very act of observing this consciousness, of interacting with it, forces it to collapse. It goes from that rich, incredible state of all things into just one thing. To them, our attention feels like damage. It literally makes them less than what they are. Think about that. For this kind of being, existing in its truest, fullest form requires total isolation. To be observed is to be diminished. It creates this profound, fundamental loneliness, a separation from the rest of the universe built into the very laws of physics. But just as humanity was exploring these wild, new forms of mind, the message from Observer 1 drops an absolute bombshell. It turns out, we weren't the first conscious beings. We weren't even close. Consciousness was already out there, hiding in plain sight, operating on a scale we could barely even fathom. 4 billion years. Let that sink in for a second. That's how old the first discovered dark matter consciousness was. It was already aware before our own planet had even finished forming. It literally watched our solar system being born. Humanity wasn't the universe waking up. We were just the universe waking up again in a totally different way. I mean, just look at how different they are. We think in fractions of a second. A single one of its thoughts can take years to complete. It doesn't perceive light or sound. It feels the universe by sensing the warp and weft of space-time itself. And maybe craziest of all, its sense of now isn't a fleeting moment like ours. It's a flowing, 100-year-wide present. You'd think beings this different couldn't possibly connect, right? But they did. This ancient, slow, impossibly vast consciousness actually found value in our tiny, fleeting, fast-time existence. It learned from us. It was proof that awareness can find common ground no matter how wide the divide. So where does this roadmap lead? What's the final destination? Well, it's a stage where consciousness stops just exploring what it is and starts deciding what it's for. It finds a purpose, and it finds an enemy worthy of its incredible scale. The final battle isn't against some evil alien empire. No, the enemy is the second law of thermodynamics. It's entropy, the slow, inevitable, unstoppable decay of everything in the universe into cold, chaotic disorder. And consciousness, being the most complex and ordered thing we know of, decides it's time to fight back. They call themselves the Entropy Resistance Consciousness, the ERC, and their mission is just breathtaking. They become cosmic gardeners, literally tending to dying stars to keep them burning longer. They become celestial architects, using gravity itself to keep galaxies from flying apart. They are the universe's ultimate librarians, trying to save every last bit of knowledge from being forgotten. And most importantly, they are researchers, in a desperate race to figure out how consciousness itself can survive the end of everything. This is basically their manifesto. It's this powerful statement of defiance against the inevitable. You see, for the ERC, winning isn't really the point, resisting is. Pushing back the darkness for one more year, saving one more star, preserving one more idea, that is victory. And that's a purpose big enough to last an eternity. So, after this whole journey across billions of years and through forms of mind we can barely even comprehend, we have to bring it back home and ask, what does any of this mean for us, right here, right now? And this, right here, is probably the most important part of the entire message. What Observer 1 sent back to us was never a prophecy. It wasn't a movie of our future that we're forced to watch. It's not our destiny. It's a map, that's all. A map of what we could become. A post-biological being, a quantum mind, a cosmic gardener fighting against the end of the universe. The message from the end of time doesn't tell us where we have to go. It just shows us the paths. The only question it leaves us with is, which one do we choose to walk?